If you are someone who is currently experiencing some debilitating physical symptoms due to some sort of anxiety, whether that is a past event or past trauma that you went through, or something that thrust you into a state of fight or flight, where you are constantly experiencing things throughout your body that you can't explain, that your doctors can't explain, that when you talk to friends and family, they don't know how to level with you, this video is for you, because I know how to level with you, because I was you for 3.5 years. I know what it's like to be in your exact position at this moment, searching for YouTube videos on this topic while you're going through symptoms and you can't explain what's going on. You've probably been to the doctors several times and the tests always come up clean. Always, always, always. And yet you leave that ER or you leave that doctor's office and you still experience the symptoms several days later and you don't know what to do. I can only pray that my story, my testimony, can give you some glimpse of hope and something to hold on to in your struggle, okay? I know exactly how you feel, and I'm going to do my best to help you in any way I can. And even if you haven't gone through that cycle, I highly suggest that you watch this video anyways if you have the time, because there are a lot of tools that I learned through my insane 3.5-year story with unexplainable symptoms that I feel like the common person can glean from. Because I know personal friends of mine that don't suffer through crazy physical symptoms of like anxiety, and but they still crash out over some of the simplest things. And my experience has taught me to be like, some of the things that I go through on a day-to-day basis now, like the daily stressors of life, it means nothing to me anymore because of what I've gone through. Okay? And before I go into everything, full disclosure, if you have not been checked out by your doctor, if you're experiencing something severe symptom-wise and you have not been checked out by a doctor, I highly recommend you go get that checked first to rule anything out and then come back to this video because, most people watching this video are people who have been told you're fine, they've done all the blood work, all the scans, and they're fine, okay? If you haven't done that, then I highly recommend you do that. So as I said, this video is going to be a long one. I did my best to break it up into YouTube chapters here so you can click around. I'm going to get into the biggest lessons I learned, what the timeline looked like for me, not because I'm trying to give you a timeline. Your timeline is not going to be my timeline. My timeline happened to be 3.5 years. I've seen some people get out of this in 3 months. But I want to show you what I learned along the way during my journey and during my path. And then I'm going to talk about the physical, like the symptoms that I actually experienced. And then I'm going to tell you what I wish I would have done differently. And the number one thing I wish I would have done differently, and I'm going to get into everything later, but I wish I would have thrown it all at God's feet and trusted in Him. And of course, there were many times where I sought after God and I prayed and I said like, Lord, why is this happening to me? Like, how can I get out of this? But I was going through some crazy things in my life, and quite frankly, some of my lifestyle choices were not drawing me closer to Him. And so that's a whole story for another time, but I was riddled with guilt. I've been a Christian since 2007. And, there's been a lot of ups and downs. And during this struggle, it was a down period for me. And there were times where I would draw near and then pull away because of guilt. And then I would draw near and then pull away. But I wish I would have just laid it all at His feet and trusted in Him and cast my cares upon Him, because He cares for us. He cares for me. But I didn't do that. Or at least I didn't do it as often as I wish I would have. That's the number one regret that I have. So I wanted to front load this here with some of those disclaimers, and now let's get into it. What my symptoms were and how they started. So the number one most debilitating symptom for me was chest pain and every type of chest symptom that you can possibly imagine, okay? I am talking a dull, light chest pain, an intense chest pain. I have had pains going up and down my left arm. Yes, literally. Tingling in my fingers, only my left arm, freaked me out. I have had sharp chest pain, rapid, like onset chest pain, stinging chest pain. One time, it felt like someone stuck a needle right through my chest and it went all the way to my back. Literally, I'm not kidding you. I would experience ectopic heartbeats where your heart literally skips a beat, or it kind of like, it feels like it skips a beat, and maybe it did many times, but where I would be like, it would be beating normal and all of a sudden it would go boom, boom, and then I'd go, and then it would go boom, back to normal. One time, I was working with a business partner next to me and I had 4 heartbeats pounding right in a row. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it went back to normal, and it jolted me so much that my business partner looked at me, he's like, "You okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, dude, I'm totally fine. Don't worry about me." I was definitely not fine. So any chest symptom that you can think of, I've experienced, but not only have I experienced it, I have been checked for, okay? And I'm gonna go into that more when I tell you my story. But the other thing that I experienced that I didn't even know was a thing until like 3 years into it was something called derealization. It's when the world around you doesn't feel real. You don't feel like your senses are not tuned in. Like there was a point towards the back half of my recovery where I would be walking my dogs and I'm like, whoa, I just got a whiff of the grass, the lawn. That's something I guess I haven't really experienced in a long time. You start becoming more aware of everything around you, your senses, your vision, like things that you're able to smell and like take in. I was finally coming out of it and I didn't even know what I was really experiencing. I had no idea what derealization was until I was coming out of it. And the final thing that I went through in the very late stages of my recovery, you know that saying where it says it's darkest before the dawn? I had suffered through some insane insomnia for about 7 months where I fall asleep like a brick, like a sack of potatoes, just boom. But I wake up around 1:30, 2 a.m., and being unable to fall back asleep. So I'm operating my entire days, waking up at 1 or 2 in the morning. However, it was that struggle that it was what I learned to overcome that. It's what helped me overcome it all. And it's crazy how it all came together. So I'm gonna get into that now. So how did this all start? So in early January of 2022, in the first few days, I was at peak stress when it came to a business situation where I was at odds. Me and another business partner were at odds with another business partner. And I thought I was going to lose everything. I thought I was going to lose, my shares of the company. It was about to be a very stressful year. And I reached peak anxiety and it started producing some chest pain in my left side. I didn't really think too much of it, but the next night, I started getting more worried about the chest pain. So basically, it was like this vicious cycle to where I was nervous about the situation going down, and then the chest pain was coming up, and then I was scared of the chest pain, and then it just kind of like spiraled out of control. And so I was at dinner with my family, and long story short, sitting down, my heart rate was 140 beats per minute. It was insane. And so I went to the ER and I thought for sure that something was wrong with my heart. So I go to the ER, and once they go and put the EKG on me, my heart rate was down in the 70s. And I'm like, what the heck is going on here? They did the EKG, everything was completely fine. They did the blood test, the x-ray, the EKG, it scans for the abnormalities of the pulse and all that kind of stuff, and everything was fine. I was like, that's really, really weird. However, after I left the emergency room, the symptoms did not go away. And for the next 10 days or so, I still had this like chest pain. I still had some pain in my left arm. And so I go into the doctors again and I'm like, what's going on? And they did more scans on me. Couldn't find anything. And long story short, for the next year and a half, I had gone to the doctors in some way, shape, or form, whether that was the ER or whether that was my primary doctor, probably a total of like 12 to 15 times or so, and it was over a year and a half span, so it wasn't like I was going in every week, but like I would experience a different type of chest sensation, and then I would go be seen. And then a couple months later, I would feel a weird squeezing in my chest, and I'm like, I need to go be seen. So I went to go get seen, run all the results, nothing. And I'm just like, what's going on here? I had one primary doctor refer me to another primary doctor who specialized in cardiology. And so I was like, okay, I'm getting somewhere, but every single time, all of my tests were clean, clean, clean. I was also very healthy. Like this was a series of my life where I was starting to lose a lot of weight. My total weight loss journey, which I'll get into in another video, was about 80 pounds. And this was right in the middle of that. So I was making good physical progress, but my pain was still there. And so basically, all the way up to June of 2023, I was still randomly going into the ER or like the hospital to see my primary every, I don't know, several months or whatever, but it was always on my mind. My head was always on a swivel during that first year and a half. Like, I'm not kidding you. If I was traveling somewhere, I would look up on the map like, okay, if something happens, there's a hospital right here. And if this happens, this is what I'm going to do, right? It was crazy. And if you're watching this video and you've never been through this kind of thing before, you're probably wondering like, why were you thinking about this? Like, they told you you were fine, but here's the key. Is when you are in fight or flight, your reasonable thinking goes out the window and it's just all fear. And so I had to operate my days like this. And it was very, very stressful. So, in June of 2023, I ended up getting an echocardiogram. My doctor said, okay, fine, let's just do more extensive testing. Let's actually get you an echocardiogram. To where it's actually an ultrasound of the heart to show you everything. I mean, I could see the arteries, like all this kind of stuff, right? Or some of the veins, whatever it was, like the main artery that pumps the blood to your heart. All of it, I could see it functioning with my eyes on an ultrasound. Then they put me on the treadmill to do a stress test. And guess what? Everything was fine. And so I'm sitting there, I'm like, where do I go from here, right? And long story short, a couple months later, I did one more ER trip because I experienced some sort of deep, deep stinging pain in my left side. And I'm like, oh, this is way different than anything ever before. I need to go be seen again. Sure enough, nothing happened. And I was in the ER, I was in the waiting room of the ER, and I signed up for this online community called Bye Bye Panic, where they hold weekly calls with people, and they have a coach help you through your situation. And basically, I signed up for that in the waiting room. Now, let that sink in. I signed up for a program in the waiting room because subconsciously I already knew that nothing was wrong with me. And so that's when I started to kind of try to change my approach, because for that first year and a half, I was still resisting, I was still fighting, I was still constantly worrying, I was still Googling certain symptoms. You got to cut all of that out, okay? And so basically, the first year and a half was me trying to just fix it at every turn and looking for new solutions and running to the ER room, running to different doctors, different hospitals, all that kind of stuff. The second year and a half, I did not go be seen by a doctor one time. Not once, not even for a random regular checkup. I got to a point to where I was like, there's nothing that these doctors can do for me anymore. There's just nothing that they can do for me anymore. Because I know when I go in, I am going to be told that you're fine. And like, the thing is, my hospital visits or, doctor visits, whatever, they were spread out over that year and a half. So it's not like I got 12 checkups within a 3-month span. No, I had like one checkup, and then a month later another checkup, and then 3 months later another checkup, and the testing kept getting more and more extensive, but I kept getting, the fear didn't go away because my brain was not working correctly. My nervous system was not healed. And that's one thing that you have to understand, is that if you are going through this right now, your nervous system is currently very sensitized to where everything you're experiencing in your days that's normally at a 5, it's dialed up to a 10 right now because your nervous system is overstimulated and it takes time to heal. Okay? The only reason it took me 3.5 years to heal from this is because I didn't realize that sooner. And I was trying to put a time limit on everything. And by the way, I do want to thank God that I didn't develop some sort of crazy agoraphobia. Agoraphobia is like when you're afraid to do anything outdoors or you're afraid to go outside because you're so wrecked with anxiety. I was still going on my yearly Italy trip during these times. So yes, I remember all of the experiences that this chest pain kind of robbed me of. I remember in 2022, in July, I went to to Italy with my family, and we're sitting there in the big piazza in Florence, and I'm seeing this orchestra play a version of a Star Wars song, like the Darth Vader song on the cellos and everything. You have a composer up there, and I was feeling this crazy chest pain, worrying about it, and I couldn't be in the moment. While everyone around me is sitting there taking videos and having a good time, and I'm just sitting there silently suffering. And so, thank God because I know that some people, their lives are completely derailed and they can't do anything without, like, they would never be able to get on a plane. And I was able to, and I thank God for that. But, so the second 1.5 years, my approach was basically just to ignore it. But ignoring it, in my experience, does not work either. So trying to worry about it and fix it didn't work for me. And ignoring it didn't work for me. Because I would still feel the chest pain, I would be worried about it, but I would just be like, okay, I just can't really worry about it right now. I'll just think about it later. The number one thing that worked for me, though, is acceptance. It's true acceptance. And I'll keep getting into that as I continue and as I talk about the lessons that I learned later in the video. But to wrap my story up, I started slowly getting over the chest pain with time. The group I was a part of, once I really plugged in more and got on the calls, I really started seeing the flaws in my thinking and I started worrying less, and certain things started to come back to me. Like I told you earlier, it's like certain smells would come back. I would be able to, I'd be suddenly just more aware of my surroundings, and I would have little moments where the chest pain would actually go away. Because keep in mind something, I'm not kidding you when I tell you that I experienced some sort of chest symptom, whether that's a dull pain, a sensation, or whatever, every waking hour from January of 2022 until the summer of 2025. And there are times that right now I still feel symptoms. Literally to this day, sometimes I still feel symptoms. And that right there just might set some of you free, because it's not about measuring your progress based on your level of symptoms. It's measuring your reaction and your fear level of those symptoms. Once you've been told you're okay, there's nothing to be afraid of, and you're going to be okay, I promise you. But you have to accept it. And that's the point I got to. So with time, my worry about the chest pain was going away, right? I was like, it's still very annoying, it's still very frustrating, it still derails my days, but I'm just gonna kind of push through it. And then in December of 2024, I started suffering. December of 24, January of 25, I started experiencing the most insane bout with insomnia in my life, okay? And yes, this was caused by intrusive thoughts. So I would wake up and be unable to sleep because my mind would be racing. And so I would wake up first it started at waking up at 4:30 in the morning, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so early. How am I gonna operate my days? But the more I worried about it, the earlier I started waking up. So then I started waking up at 3 o'clock, and I'm like, oh my God, I really need to get back to sleep, because I'm a very early riser naturally. So I get my day started at 6 o'clock in the morning. And so I'm like, I only have 3 hours to fall asleep. What am I going to do? And then it got really bad. I mean, I'm talking waking up at 1 o'clock in the morning. Some nights I would be able to sleep all night. And I was like, thank you, Lord. But then other nights, I wake up at 2 a.m., wake up at 2:30, wake up at 1:30. One time I woke up at 12:30 in the morning and I wasn't able to go back to sleep. I was going through my days like a zombie. And then my chest pain got worse. And so the spring of 2025 were some of the craziest moments for me. And I still was like, I was coming out of it, but I was still suffering crazy symptoms, but I just kept pushing and I kept pushing and I kept going forward. And it all finally, and by the way, earlier this year is when I finally said, okay, you know what? Like, not because I'm scared or anything, but I really should get some blood work done. It's been a year and a half or whatever. I got my blood work done, and even though I'm in my mid-30s, my biological age is 26 years old, okay? So I'm basically 9.5, 10 years younger biologically than I am in the real world. So it's like all of this started, like, kept clicking for me. And that's one thing that you have to understand, is that you can't put a time limit on this recovery, okay? It takes time for your nervous system to heal. And if you've been doing things the wrong way, if you've been resisting for too long, if you have been fearful for too long, the longer it's going to take for your nervous system to heal, okay? And so it got to the point in about May and early June where I had the most fear of my insomnia that you can possibly imagine. And I was trying to fix it in a million different ways. I was like, all right, here's what I'm going to do. Here's my grand plan. Again, not running to God at all and not praying for his wisdom and his just discernment of how I should go. But I started saying, all right, my plan is this. I'm not going to have any caffeine after 10 a.m. I am going to stop drinking all fluids at 6:30 p.m. I am not going to have, I'm going to start wearing my blue blocker glasses to block out all the blue light every single night at about 7 p.m. I'm going to start reading a book and turn off all screens by 8:30, and that is going to solve it. Guess what? It didn't solve it at all. If anything, it made it worse. And here's why it made it worse. Is because all of the things that I was doing to fix it actually was reinforcing to my brain just how afraid I really was of not being able to sleep an entire night. And something I learned from the book, Man's Search for Meaning, which I highly recommend you read. Now, there are 3 books I highly recommend you reading. Okay, the Bible. The Bible is one book that is just as practical as it is spiritual. And it does a lot of good for your heart and your spirit if you're not a Christian or if you are a Christian. Okay, and we'll talk about that in other videos. The other book I highly recommend for this struggle, and I only recommend these 3. The Bible. Number 2 is At Last a Life. And number 3 is Man's Search for Meaning. And I'll get into these 2 books here in a minute. But in Man's Search for Meaning, they talks about paradoxical intention. Doing the opposite of what you're afraid of, right? So leaning into it. So I flipped everything on its head. And this is where the final notch in the breakthrough happened for me. Remember I told you all those rules I had? Of not drinking caffeine after a certain time, trying to do a certain wake up times and all this stuff, trying to plan everything out, not drinking liquids before bed. Not only did I throw those rules out the window, but I started doing the opposite. One of my biggest breakthroughs was when my cousins were over and I had a shot of espresso at 7:30 at night. And guess what? It's one of the best nights of sleep that I ever had. Because what you'll learn is whatever's going on up here is far more important than anything physically you can do. More powerful than any sleep supplement, melatonin, anything like that. It's what's going on between the ears. And once that happened, my breakthrough was massive. And things started evolving rapidly. My life started truly changing. And like I said, guys, recovery is not just from one day to another. It is little tiny steps over time. And I stopped measuring my progress based on how bad my symptoms were. I stopped worrying finally. I let go and I stopped trying to control every single thing. It led me to an incredible experience that I had, an actual encounter with God. I was walking, I remember it like it was yesterday. I was walking, it was a Friday morning before I was going to go into the office, and I'm listening to this Christian song called I Could Sing of Your Love Forever. And it was a beautiful morning here in Coronado, California. It's about 7 o'clock in the morning. And my derealization started changing. And I got this whiff of ocean breeze. And it was like I became more dereal. I came out of that derealization. Like I felt something I hadn't felt in a while. My senses were once again like active and alive. I was able to smell certain things. Like in fact, the whiff of ocean air that I got, it actually like took me back to a time when I was younger at the beach, experiencing the beach and having fun on the 4th of July with my family in Newport Beach. And I started crying on my walk. So I'm walking, crying, listening to worship music, and thanking God. And then it got to a point to where I was filled with so much joy that I started laughing uncontrollably. So I'm walking, and I'm laughing because I kept getting whiffs of like my derealization just like draining away from me. It was insane. I was like, God, thank you so much. Like this was a true encounter with the Holy Spirit that I hadn't experienced on that level in a long time. And so this all happened in like, May or June of 2025. And then things just started getting better. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I never have a bad night of sleep. Actually, this morning, I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning to use the restroom. And it probably took me another 45 minutes to get back to sleep. But I got back to sleep because I stopped worrying. I stopped sitting there saying, well, if I'm in bed, I don't want to associate my bed with not sleeping. So I'm going to get up out of my bed and read a book. No, I'm going to do a whole video just on insomnia another time. Like I said, this video is just going to be an all-encompassing video on my whole journey. And then I can talk about individual things throughout this. But so now let's get into, so that's my whole story from beginning to recovery. And like I told you, I still experience symptoms to this day. Even in this moment, there's like a little thing I feel in my chest, but it does nothing to me. And that's the biggest breakthrough you need to get through is understand. But then there are days where I don't feel anything. It took me forever to be like, whoa, this is what normal feels like. Oh my God. And I know that some of you have crazy different symptoms. Maybe you have migraines, you have nausea, you have digestion problems, you have all kinds of aches and pains and tingliness and numbness, all that stuff. And it's all cured by what I did during my story as well. So now that you've heard my entire story, I have 7 points here that I want to talk with you about that I feel are important. Some of these are things that you need to change in your thinking. Some of these are things I wish I would have done differently. Some of these are what I used in my big breakthroughs. So number 1, as I said earlier, is run to God and cast all of your cares upon Him. Ask Him to guide your paths and your steps, and He will lead you. I spun my wheels for years trying to do it on my own, trying to lean on my own understanding, as the Bible says not to do. And I regret it every single day. The times in my life that are the worst and most meaningless times in my life are when I am not drawing near to God and walking with Him. And it's not a place you want to be, not a place you ever want to be. So if you want me to pray for you, please leave a comment below and I absolutely will. Number 2, do not set a timeline for your recovery. Do not set a timeline for your recovery and say, God, I really hope my anxiety isn't bad for that event, for that trip, for that thing happening. Trust me, it will only make it worse. You have to understand that your nervous system is healing, and it's going to take time. It's going to take time, and everyone is different. Like I said earlier, I saw some people going into this program that I joined. Some people were out of there in just a few months because they just got it. And that's why I recommend that you understand this earlier than later, because the faster you just get that you need to just accept and let go, the better it will be for you. Number 3 piggybacks off of number 2, but it's, again, you need to understand what's happening. You need to understand that there's nothing wrong with you. Okay, let me say it again. If you've been checked out by your doctors, whether that's once, whether that's multiple times, there's nothing wrong with you. Your nervous system is simply severely sensitized, and it is sending alarm bells to you at all times of the day. And it is manifesting in symptoms. Okay? So you have to understand what's going on. The number 4 thing is that recovery is not linear. It doesn't just go in a straight line. And hey, I'm just getting better and better and better and better and better. No, for me, it looked like this. And then big downfalls. And then I would recover. And then I would take a few steps back. But little by little, it starts to just all strip away and you heal. And it really is kind of frustrating, because just like with my broken elbow right now, I went from being able to only lift 2 pounds on one side to eventually being able to lift 5 pounds. And now I'm working on my extension exercises and my pushing exercises. Well, right now, I can only do the range of motion like when I'm doing triceps, like just a little bit. If I do full weight with the full extension, it hurts really bad. So right now, the range of motion is just like this, little by little. And that's how the recovery with anxiety is like it's just a little bit every day. And with time, it does heal. Number 5 is to not use your symptoms as a measuring stick for your progress. I always sat there and said, oh man, I just can't wait until my symptoms go away. I just can't wait until I can have a meal without having chest pain. I can't wait until I can go to Italy without having chest pain or an ectopic heartbeat and all this kind of stuff. And that was holding my progress back big time, because I was sitting there and using it and putting pressure on my nervous system and on my subconscious to get better, when this is not something that you make better. It's something that just gets better. Let me say that again. It's not something that you make better. It's something that gets better. And that's what I learned with sleep. Sleep is not something you can force. Sleep just happens, okay? The time that you experience the least amount of insomnia is when you're not thinking about sleep whatsoever, all right? I've had times in my life where I've been crazy stressed, drinking coffee at 9 o'clock at night, and I fall asleep and stay asleep like a baby. Now, one can argue I'm not getting the best quality of sleep if I'm doing all that stuff, but you get my point. So, do not use your symptoms as a measuring stick, because you will constantly be putting pressure on your subconscious and on your nervous system, and it will not help you. It might make it worse. Number 6, I talked about this earlier. Use paradoxical intention. Now, I will admit, this is not for the faint of heart, okay? It takes a little bit of guts to where if you're afraid of waking up in the middle of the night, it takes some guts to take a shot of espresso at 7 o'clock at night, okay? But start pressing into the fear. If you have chest pains and you've been told you're okay to exercise, you go for the hardest sprint or run that you possibly can whenever your symptoms are at their worst. I'll say that again. If you've been cleared by a doctor to do whatever physical activity and your symptoms are really bothering you, go physically exert yourself as hard as you can. Now again, I'm no doctor, consult with your doctor, okay? But this is what I did, is I said, you know what? If I'm feeling weird, I'm gonna sprint. And so sometimes I'd be on the beach and I'd be feeling my chest pain really bad. And I was like, this sucks. I'm gonna go sprint for 50 yards. And little by little, now the chest pain might not go away, but Little by little, your nervous system starts to learn and adapt and say, oh, nothing bad happened to me. Another thing, this is also not for the faint of heart, is to literally dare your symptoms to get worse. This is part of number 6 with the paradoxical intention. If you're feeling bad chest pain, you accept it so much that you sit back and say, get worse. Go ahead. I want to feel the biggest chest squeeze of my life. 9 times out of 10, it stopped. And it was just crazy how it would happen. So I highly recommend you do that. It is not for the faint of heart. It is a more advanced strategy, but I highly recommend it. And number 7 is to find meaning in your suffering. Okay, I learned this from Man's Search for Meaning. And he talks about when you are going through suffering, those who make it are those who find meaning in that suffering. Not just tolerating the suffering, not just getting through the suffering, but actually finding meaning. And that leads me to this very moment that I used to visualize months and months ago, which is I said, when I get out of this, I'm going to be making videos helping people. And it's really an amazing thing. I had someone reach out to me in my DMs saying, Clayton, I've been suffering through chest pain. I need your help. And that's another reason I was inspired to make this long form video to tell you my whole story. So I will admit, this video was a little clunky, but it's really hard to encapsulate 3.5 years into a video of, even if it's probably gonna end up to be around 20-something, 30 minutes. But I am going to be making more quick hitting individual videos on the various things I experienced. I just needed a base point that someone could reference to hear the entire story. And it's actually not even the entire story, because there's, like I said earlier, there's a lot of nuances that happened during this story. But I want to thank God for helping me to get out of this. That experience that I had from, like, with him on that Friday morning in Coronado, California, where I felt his presence so strongly to where I could literally not withhold my tears and my laughter. That is something that I wish all of you to experience. And if you're watching this, then I pray for you. I pray that you are healed. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, and I will do my best to answer them. I don't have a lot of subscribers right now, so I will answer anything that I come across. And that's all I have for you today. So God bless you. And I'm sure I forgot something. I'm sure I missed something in my video, but I will keep making more videos on this in the future, and I'll be talking to you soon.